Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Johnathan Ahmadi, and I am Congresswoman Katie Hill's Senior District Rep. I'm based here in her Santa Clarita Valley office, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Perfect. So we're going to go over a high-level overview of the Congresswoman's committee assignments, a selection of the caucuses, take a look at some of the legislation that she has been working on, and some of the work that she's been doing here in the district as well. So she is on, as you can see, the House Committee on Oversight, and there she's on the Subcommittee on Environment and Economic and Consumer Policy. She's also on the House Armed Services Committee, where she's on the Subcommittee on Tactical Air and Land Forces and the Subcommittee on Sea Power and Projection Forces. And finally, she's on the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee, where she's on the Subcommittee on Space and Aeronautics. This is just a selection of some of the caucuses that she's on. She's on the Blue Collar Caucus, the Congressional PFAS Task Force, which some of you who have been going to the water agency meetings know is an issue here in this valley. The Congressional Caucus for Women's Issues, the Congressional Mental Health Caucus, the Housing Task Force Co-Chair, and the Congressional Homelessness Caucus. And there's a description up there as to what a caucus is. It's a little bit wordy, so we'll just talk through it. It's essentially a collection of legislators that are all focused on one issue. And so, as you can see, and you can go to her website and see the full list of caucuses that she's on, she's uniquely positioned to be able to introduce and work on legislation that is going to be important to this community. And the issues that she's focused on are environment, health care, veterans issues, and women's issues, and rebuilding the middle class, essentially. So she's also on a number of leadership positions. She's the vice chair of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, the co-chair of the New Democratic Coalition Task Force on Housing, the co-chair of the Equality Caucus, the co-chair of the Congressional Future Caucus. She is on House leadership as the freshman class co-representative, and she is the assistant whip of the House leadership team. We're going to go through a number of the different bills that she has co-sponsored. H.R. 2812, Protecting America's First Responders Act. H.R. 1417, the Water Affordability, Transparency, Equity, and Reliability Act of 2019. And that one I wanted to highlight because it creates a federal clean water fund to eliminate lead from school drinking water. The H.R. 1364, Child Care for Working Families Act. H.R. 1963, Expanding Care for Veterans Act. H.R. 2215, San Gabriel Mountains Foothills and Rivers Protection Act. And, you know, here in Santa Clarita, we have placed a premium on protecting our green spaces and open spaces, and the Congresswoman is committed to protecting that in D.C. as well. Just a selection of other bills: the Investing in Main Street Act of 2019, the Social Security Fairness Act of 2019, Rebuilding America's Schools Act of 2019, Empowering Act Against Workplace Harassment, Ensuring Safe Housing for Our Military Act, and Enduring Homelessness Act of 2019. Now, this is just a small selection of bills that I wanted to bring to your attention and highlight for you. And as you can see, the things that she's working on and the legislation that she's working on in D.C. is focused on her core main issues there. Here's a little statement here. Congresswoman Hill is committed to putting the people of our district first and is focused on legislation impacting the economy, environment, health care, and rebuilding the middle class. So the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about tonight is constituent casework. So now, what is constituent casework? There are a number of different federal agencies that we can act on our constituents' behalf in interfacing with them for. Right? Let's say that you have an issue with the VA, with Social Security, with the IRS, even with the post office, right? The post office is a federal agency. When you have an issue, you can come to our office, you can go to our mobile office hours, and we have constituent services representatives who will work with you to try to work on that appeals process and try to ensure that we can do everything that we can to bring that issue to resolution. There's a list here of different services that we can help with, compensation and pension benefits, survivor benefits, medical treatment for veterans and dependents, life insurance benefits, educational benefits, vocational rehab and employment benefits, burial and death benefits, immigration, naturalization forms and procedures, and really just, in summary, assistance in untangling the web of federal agencies. I know how difficult it can be when you pick up a phone to try to talk to somebody at Social Security or to try to talk to somebody at the IRS or the VA. You feel like you're waiting on hold for hours, and then finally when you do get a chance to talk to somebody, you've got the wrong department and they have to transfer you to somewhere else. We know what that challenge is like. We can interface with these agencies for you. And we have constituent caseworkers based in all three of our offices in Simi Valley, and here in our Santa Clarita Valley office, and in our Palmdale office as well. So now I just wanted to do a little... So we cannot liaise with your state agencies. We only liaise with the federal. We can, however, refer you to your state representatives if you have an issue with a state or county agency. And we will do our best to help you receive a fair and timely response to your issue. However, we cannot guarantee that the outcome you're going to receive is the outcome that you are looking for. And finally, the timelines. You know, a lot of these different agencies are working on really long timelines on these issues. We will do everything that we can to get your issue resolved or get an answer for you in a timely manner, but those things are outside of our hands and outside of our control. So it says in the past 4 months, it's really in the past 6 months since we've taken office, we've provided casework services to over 200 constituents, including 44 right here in Santa Clarita. And in working with those constituents, we've brought and secured over $330,000 worth of benefits to those individuals who came to us looking for help. Nearly $75,000 of that was for our veterans. That's benefits that they've earned through their service, that they were denied, and through the appeals process with us, we were able to help them secure. Now, there have been 8 town halls and community forums that the Congresswoman has attended in order to listen to our constituents and hear their concerns. The Congresswoman went on a youth and education tour when she got to visit 14 different schools across the district over 4 days to observe our educational needs and share the message of how students can get involved in government and in the political process. We conducted Representative Hill's first annual congressional art competition for local high schoolers and have attended dozens of events here in Santa Clarita, including the Congressional Recognition for Excellence Awards, Homes for Families, Veterans Neighborhood Tour, Muslim Community Legislator Meet and Greet, a Neighborhood Legal Services meeting, a College of the Canyons Women's Conference. She attended the Santa Clarita Cowboy Festival and the PFLAG meeting for Pride Month, a number of different community events that she's been out in the community meeting with constituents. This is the Congresswoman and your Assemblywoman Christy Smith at the annual Women's Conference at the College of the Canyons. There was a picture there. It has somehow disappeared, but that was her meeting with some of the veterans here in the district. She attended the Santa Clarita Veterans Backpack Walk, and this is her. Well, there was another picture here also of her at the Cowboy Festival, where she had a great time, got to meet a number of constituents, and there were pictures here of her on the school tour. And I really have to say she was so impressed with the young people here in our district. They are so engaged, so curious, and had a ton of really great questions for her. Everything ranging from how has she experienced sexism in D.C. to how does she feel about impeachment. You know, they really asked her a lot of hard-hitting questions, and she was so impressed. I wanted to also include for you guys the location of our Santa Clarita office here. We are on Valencia Boulevard, right down the street from City Hall, and we're in the building that's right next door to Toppers, if any of you know where Toppers is. I also wanted to include my contact information up there. As her senior district rep, I'm based here. I've met with a number of constituents and am available to meet with you as well. I also wanted to include Melissa Pender's contact information up there. Melissa Pender is really our senior constituent services representative. She handles pretty much a majority of the intake for the casework that we do, and then she will get you in touch with whichever of our constituent services representatives would be the one to interface with the agencies on your behalf. That's really everything that I had, but I wanted to leave some time for questions if there are any. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yes?
Are they getting anything done in Congress?
Yeah, so, yeah, that's a great question. And the reality is that there is a lot of gridlock right now in D.C. And, of those bills that the Congresswoman has co-sponsored, a number of them have passed out of the House and are getting stuck in the Senate. So we are focused on continuing to put legislation forward that's going to benefit people in our districts and continue to push and lobby the Senate to take up these bills in the Senate and hopefully bring resolution to them. There's nothing we can do about that. So the reason I wanted to highlight the constituent services piece is to show that even though things are a mess in D.C., there's a ton of work that we are still doing here in the community for our constituents and really for the people where the need is the most and the greatest. These veterans who have benefits that they've earned through their service to our country and are being denied, we're working as hard as we can to ensure that they have those benefits. And we're continuing to work on a really local level. I've attended all of the multi-jurisdictional task force meetings since we've been in office for the Whitaker-Burmite situation, and it's something that we're keeping an eye on very closely. I have a monthly meeting with the water agency here to stay up to date on issues like PFAS and like PFOS, and to make sure that the Congresswoman is aware of those issues that are happening here and so very important here, and that it's not getting lost in D.C. So it's a great question, and there's not a lot that we can do about the Senate, but we are working really hard on making sure that services are being provided to our constituents.
Keep on working.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yes? Please use the microphone.
I'm glad to hear that Congresswoman Hill enjoyed her trip to local classrooms.
Yes.
My question is about H.R. 3108, and I know that Congresswoman Hill is not on the Education Committee, but as a teacher, this one is near and dear to my heart, and as a person who is involved with professional development. H.R. 3108 is the Teachers Are Leaders Act, and it's sponsored in the House by 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and there's a companion piece in the Senate sponsored by 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, so it's one of those bipartisan ideas that hopefully will, make some movement. And it's about promoting professional development for mid-career teachers, that there's a focus already on professional development for early career teachers, and this extends it to mid-career teachers or later career teachers. And I know that we can count on Congresswoman Hill's support for this bill when it comes up, if it ever comes up. I think it's still in the Education Committee now, but I just wanted to
bring it to our attention.
Yay for H.R. 3108. If I had some questions or ideas about a piece of legislation involving an area that Congresswoman Hill is not involved with, is it something I would go through her office, or should I go to a member on that subcommittee, even though I'm not their constituent? What's your advice?
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
I do have 2 ideas about this bill when I read the text of it, but I don't know who to tell.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for your question. And I would say yes, bring it to our office. We will work with our legislative team in D.C. They have all of the contacts with the appropriate committees and legislative aides and directors for whoever we feel would probably be our best ally in those committees. And so please bring any ideas for legislation, any suggestions our way. You can email me, get in touch with me, and I'll make sure that that gets to our DC team. No, thank you very much. Another question in the back. No, that, yep.
Am I the back?
You are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a bill that I'm pushing, but I just wondered if the representative has spoken about how she thinks is the best way to address climate change. What is her favored solution? If
Yeah.
she's spoken about it.
Yeah, so while I can't personally speak for the Congresswoman, I know that the environment and climate change is something that she has identified as one of, if not the major issue facing us, and that there are a number of fantastic solutions that have been put forward, of which she has some very nuanced ideas. And the reality is that there's not a lot of room for nuance in today's politics. And so I would love to have a more detailed conversation with you. Just know that the climate change is one of those issues that she has identified as one that is critical. And it's critical for our future, and it's something that we need to be taking a look at now. So,
Thank you.
yes, of course. Question up here in the front, Charmaine.
I am pretty loud. So my question would be, I've actually known Katie since she was little. She was my kid's first babysitter. I do know her. My question is, though, I think that a lot of the government in D.C. now, it's their fault or that fault. What is she doing to try to reduce the polarization of the far left, the far right, and bring this nation back to where it needs to be, which a majority of us, I feel, are somewhere in the middle, that we're not getting representation from either side because they're going to extremes.
Yeah.
Seeing her already participate in some activities that are one extreme or another, what is she doing to try to break down that division that we have? That is the biggest problem. Instead of saying now it's the Senate's problem or it's the House problem, why isn't this an American problem that they're not working together? What is she doing to try to break down that division and work on both sides?
Yeah. Well, so thank you for that question. And what I will say is that, listen, you know Katie, right? The Congresswoman ran because she wanted to get work done. She didn't run so that she could participate in partisan squabbles in D.C. That's not why she went. And so there are a number of different bills that she has co-sponsored that have bipartisan support. And when it comes to legislation for the Congresswoman, it doesn't matter if it's somebody if it was put forward by a Republican or if it was put forward by a Democrat. If it's something that will help this community, then it's something that she will support. And so the other thing that I would say is that the Congresswoman is always going to tell you exactly how she feels, for better or worse. And so I think that that's something that's refreshing. I think that that's something that we don't see a lot of in D.C., and that she will say the same thing to her Republican colleagues as she will say to her Democratic colleagues. And I think that goes a long way.
Now,
So,
if you go to her website, can you see what she's voting on? Is there one location that we could go and see? What is she voting on?
yeah.
Why
So,
is she supporting what?
So I know that we've recently redone the website, and it's constantly a work in progress. You can always get in touch with me. I know that, so the challenge is that things are always happening really fast and moving really fast, and that there's always a number of different pieces of legislation that they're voting on that are coming out of the committees that she's co-sponsoring or not. And so I think that one of the reasons that a lot of that isn't prominent on the website is because it's constantly changing and upgrading and updating, and it would be difficult to keep it up to date. And so I think when it comes to specific pieces of legislation, then I would, again, reach out to me and say, hey, this is something that's important to me. I want to know, where does the Congresswoman stand on this? Has she co-sponsored it? What's happening with this piece of legislation? Is it stalled in committee? And so on. And I would be happy to also provide you with a number of different bills that have bipartisan support that she has co-sponsored as an example of that work that she's doing. So, and I have a card too, if that's easier. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm Jerry Stack. I'd like to know what is the Congresswoman's position on health care? Is she for Medicare for all, and if so, how does that affect our veterans?
Yeah. So, thank you. Again, another great question. I don't know that she has taken a position on any of the stances and policies that have been put forward by, say, any of the Democratic candidates, like Medicare for All, or there's another one that was put out by Senator Klobuchar. I don't know that she's taken a specific position on any of those. What I can tell you is that she's fighting every day to ensure that we continue to have access to health care, and that currently what's happening in the courts is that they are ruling on whether or not the ACA is going to stand or if that bill is going to have to be struck down, including all of its protections. And so that specifically is something that she is fighting against and will continue to work to protect the ACA and to make sure that it is providing benefits to people. Now, in terms of the veterans, that's another area where she's working really hard. I want to say there's a number of bills that she has co-sponsored that are, for example, H.R. 1963, expanding Care for Veterans Act, which would implement a VA research study into cutting-edge treatments of chronic pain and PTSD to reduce overprescription on opioids and improve veterans' quality of life. So it's not just a matter of giving more money to the VA, it's a matter of how do we take those resources and make them more effective and address things like the opioid epidemic and help our veterans, the people who have served our country. So.
One question for me.
Yes.
Homelessness is a big issue in Santa Clarita right now, going all around. Can you share any of the details of the bill that Katie is sponsoring about ending homelessness?
Yeah, so I don't have any specific information on that at this time. I will get that and get back to you so that you can share it with this group if I'm not able to attend at the next meeting. So yes, this bill, Ending Homelessness Act of 2018, I will get the specifics on what that does and get that back to you. But like I said, she is on the, where is it? The Congressional Homelessness Caucus and the Housing Task Force co-chair. And so I know that there are a number of things that are happening really at the city, the county, the state, and the federal level to try to address the homelessness issue here in Santa Clarita and in Southern California. And so I will get the specifics on that bill for you. Yes?
Doug Frazier, you mentioned that the AD or the Obamacare, I don't know.
The ACA, yeah.
ACA. If it gets struck down, will it immediately cancel all the protections, or will there be 6 months where people like children under 26, will they eventually be, or will they be immediately cut off?
Yeah, so again, that's a great question, and I think the reality is that we don't know what the full impact of striking down the ACA would be. If that law is termed to be struck down, then my understanding, and I could be wrong on this, is that any of those children who were and young adults who are on their parents' plan past a certain age could potentially lose their insurance. I don't know what would happen to the marketplaces and how those plans are structured. And I think that's one of the problems that we're seeing, right, is that there are advances that are happening in D.C. with no plan for how that's going to impact people in a very real way. But again, that's some information that I would love to get back to you as to what would be the immediate and specific impacts if that that law were struck down. And what I do want to say is that I believe that it would be appealed immediately because this is one of the lower courts, and that there would be an opportunity for the Supreme Court to take it up. And so, again, and that would at least put a hold on any immediate impact from that ruling.
What does she support? Is she supporting the system the way it is now, which, as a healthcare provider, I can tell you it doesn't work?
Yeah.
Or is she supporting an adjustment to it? Because there are aspects, like you said, that would be very detrimental to lose for the majority of the population.
Right.
But the way it's set up now, a lot of these people use emergency departments for their primary care because they can't get a physician.
Yeah.
So when the system's not working and it's overloading an already overloaded system.
Yeah.
So what is she supporting?
Yeah, and listen, she recognizes that there are very, yes, this is an issue that she's very intimately aware of. And the Congresswoman herself went to school to become a nurse. Well, there you go. So she's very well and intimately aware of the challenges that our healthcare system faces, and recognizes that we need some real change. But the ACA is doing some real good for people. There are millions of people that didn't have access to health care and didn't have access to health insurance that have it now through the protections of that bill. And so I know that her primary focus is to make sure that that those people don't lose their health care and don't lose access to the services. Because again, to your point, those same people would then add to that burden of emergency room. Yeah. So
does she support an adjustment to it versus a complete keep it the way it is now?
no. So yes, we recognize that there are challenges with the law as is, and that it does need changes. I mean, we need to strengthen the markets. We need to build and ensure.
Affordable to the people who have to purchase them.
Right. And so there are absolutely changes that need to happen, but we can't just have all those millions of people who now have access to health care lose it. And so I know that this is an issue that's really near and dear to her heart, and it's something that she's working on and looking at all the different bills and proposals that are in place. So that's about all the time that I have tonight. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your great questions, and I'm going to try and get back the next opportunity that I have.